So Dee Dee and I were excited to watch Lisa Weintraub, who many of you know grew up at KI and who, by the way, is a wonderful chef, in case you need a chef, as a contestant this summer on the reality show Big Brother. It was very fun, but I realized that I didn't really know how ubiquitous the impact of reality TV has been on our culture until a colleague of mine recently told me about a wedding that he did where the groom and the groomsmen were all standing in a line in front of the chuppah waiting for the bride to come down. The bride shows up at the end of the aisle, everybody stands up, and then this little 3 or 4-year-old girl sitting in the front row excitedly shouts out, "I wonder which one she'll pick." It's clean, right? All right. Story number 2. So a new business was opening, and one of the owner's friends wanted to, congratulate his friend and send flowers. And when the flowers arrived at the new business site, the owner read the card. It said simply, "Rest in peace." Rest in peace, what the hell, said the guy who received the flowers. So he called up the florist to complain and told him about the obvious mistake and how upset he was. And the florist said, "Look, I'm really sorry, sir, for the mistake. But before you get too angry, just imagine this, that somewhere there's a funeral taking place today, and they have flowers with a note saying, 'Congratulations on your new location.'" Also clean, right? Just checking. Look, the thing is that we all have not only a physical location, but we have a spiritual one as well, and that's where we really live. And that has been a tough, unexpected, and disturbing location for all of us this year. It increasingly feels like the world as we knew it is falling apart, and the traditional liberal values of democracy and peaceful transition of power and the free exchange of ideas is more and more under attack and discarded by a sharp turn to authoritarianism across the globe. Just a few weeks ago, for the first time since the Holocaust, a far-right party won a state election in Germany. And a dictator who didn't win in Venezuela, as you I'm sure know, simply declared himself that he was the winner and arrested his political opponent who had actually won. And here in our own country, well, I don't dare enumerate. And sadly, it goes without saying that this has been one of the most painful, shocking, depressing years in recent modern history for Jews throughout the world. The horror and brutality of October 7th was followed by a profound feeling of abandonment by those we thought were allies in almost every walk of life. The shock of confronting the same ancient and evidently ever-present lies and libels, total misrepresentations of Judaism, Jewish values, and the very foundation of Jewish history itself by more enemies than we can even count has sent us all spiraling into despair. And our college students are feeling terrorized on virtually every campus in America. And even though I'm not going there tonight, the anger we feel, the depression we experience, the frustration we all feel still form the underlying context in which everything we talk about resides, even the joys and celebrations of our lives. But it's Rosh Hashanah, it's the new year. So tonight I want to share with you my formula for the antidote to anger, and the antidote to depression, and the antidote to frustration. So let me start this way. This year, Dee Dee and I celebrated 2 major milestones. First, we both turned 75. I know, really. 75. 3/4 of a century old. Terrifying. And second, we celebrated our 40th anniversary. Yes, still together, thank you, very sweet. And it made me think of that Yiddish proverb that I can never pronounce correctly, but you're left with me. De Liebe es süß, nor sie ist gut mit Lukschen, meaning love is great, but it's better with noodles. Especially for me, since ever since that prostate cancer thing, I've been a vegan, so it works well for me. Some famous guru once said that the teachers we need most are the people we are living with right now. For me, obviously, Didi. So here's the first lesson. To celebrate our 40th anniversary, we went on a cruise from Buenos Aires to Miami that stopped in various small towns along the way in Brazil. And over and over and over again, we were warned before we got off the ship at every port to watch out for little kids on the street, because there were lots of little pickpockets and thieves whose parents sent them out to beguile tourists and steal purses and wallets or any money they could wheedle out of you with pathetic or tear-filled begging. So there we were, visiting the town of Salvador, Brazil. It was hot and humid and altogether not that pleasant to begin with, and to visit the, quote, local indoor market, we had to walk quite a ways, which frankly made us a bit grumpier than usual as well. So of course, sure enough, there he was, this little beggar boy following us down the street, rattling off in Portuguese, which of course meant nothing to us, gesturing toward his mouth and toward his stomach, and that like he was hungry, and then holding out his hand, and then pulling on us as well, and not leaving us alone. Now, if it's ever happened to you while traveling, you know just how frustrating and irritating it can be, and you just can't seem to get away. Naturally, I kept saying, let's just ignore him. But alas, I was, after all, traveling with Didi. And Didi is Didi. If you've ever seen her even in the Palisades, it takes about an hour to cross the street with her, because she simply stops for everyone and gives them her undivided attention for as long as they keep talking. So in the middle of the street in Salvador, Brazil, she stopped, turned around and opened her purse, started to reach in, first to give him a little pullback card, which she always carries with her, just in case she runs into some kid anywhere in the world, and then to give him some money. But instead of reaching for the money, the little beggar boy shook his head and pointed across the street to a store, and then started pulling Didi into the store, and obviously me along with him. Now we were in a store filled with, the usual pharmacy type stuff, and lots of shelves of candy and chips and sodas and other goodies. So Didi pointed to all this stuff and tried to figure out what this little kid wanted. But he was a little man with a plan. And with that, he ran over to a shelf on the far side of the store, grabbed something and hugged it to his body so that it took us a minute to even figure out what he was holding. When we finally recognized it, it turned out it was a large box of baby formula. That's right, baby formula. And then he went like this, pointed to the baby, pointed to the formula, pointed out the window, totally ignoring the candy and the snacks and the chips and the sodas or anything else in the entire store. Baby formula was the only thing that he wanted us to buy. And when we bought it, he grabbed our hands in gratitude and ran off with the formula, clearly in a hurry to feed not himself, but a baby, presumably a baby brother or sister, as if this little kid had become the man of the family, the provider of the family at maybe 10 years old. Oh, and by the way, while he was dragging Didi across the street, he reached over to her purse, as I watched very carefully, and he closed the purse, and then he wiggled his finger at her to warned her that she shouldn't leave an open purse while she's out walking on the street. When that kid ran off with that baby formula, nothing for him, no more hustling for money, we literally both had tears in our eyes and broken hearts, standing in that little pharmacy in Salvador, Brazil, as our many preconceived fears and prejudices came crumbling down. As we stood there, shaking our heads with the tragic poignancy of it all, Dee Dee was, of course, thinking about what else we could have done for that little boy. And I was thinking about the Talmud. What can I say? I'm a rabbi. But you've all heard it anyway. One of the most famous comments in the Talmud, the commentary on Genesis that says God created the world with one person so that no one can say, my ancestors are better than yours. And the rabbinic commentary that follows immediately after that says, therefore, one who destroys one life is as if you destroyed an entire world, and one who saves one life is as if you saved an entire world. Well, there was that one little life, that one little world. Him and his baby brother or sister, which then reminded us of that famous starfish story that everybody knows about, with the guy on the shore throwing starfish into the sea with the great punchline that says, it makes a difference to this one. Maybe that is the real lesson for all of us, not just tonight, but all the time. It makes a difference to this one. Because really, every one of us is this one. Every person you meet, the ones you love, the ones who irritate you, the ones who are voting for whomever, are this one too. Focus on, 8 billion people in the world? That's impossible. You realize that just 1 billion is 1,000 million. So 8 billion people is 8,000 million people. And we Jews, better than almost anyone on the planet, know the truth that size really doesn't matter. After all, what are we, maybe 15 million in the world, in the midst of 8,000 million? And we know with great pride what we have accomplished with our tiny, tiny, almost non-existent number of people. So that day with that little kid was, for me, Dee Dee lesson number 1. Making a difference in one person's life really is what really matters. It sure did to him. And number 2, you will never know what someone else is actually thinking or wants unless you ask. None of us can read minds, even though we act as if we really know the mind, the heart, the soul of others, especially those with whom we don't agree, simply by how they look or how they act. I will never forget that little kid and the responsibility that he took for his baby brother or sister, and my own instant negative assumptions and judgments about him. How quick we are to judge the intentions, the thoughts, the desires, even the dreams of others. What better Rosh Hashanah lesson could there be than that as well, especially this year? Perhaps that's why some of the greatest high holiday advice ever given is actually found in the words of a famous Christian writer, Henry James, who famously wrote, 3 things in human life are important. The first is to be kind. The second is to be kind. The third is to be kind. It's like that powerful Malayan proverb, one can pay back the loan of gold, but one dies forever in debt to those who are kind. Wouldn't it be shocking if the true antidote to anger, the true antidote to frustration, the true antidote to depression was as simple as kindness. How do you show up as your best version? Kindness. It's so obvious, I don't have to tell you. You let someone in your lane on the freeway or coming down Chautauqua. You let the person with 2 or 3 things in their hand standing behind you in line at Gelson's go in front of you when your cart is full. You go for a walk with a friend who is struggling or alone. You bring food to someone who is sick. Maybe you see something really cute with the initials of someone you know and you buy it and surprise them with it as a gift. Or you write a note to someone who's grieving, or you put a quarter in someone's meter, or give the most precious gift you have, your time, to someone, and 100 other ways to simply be kind. So this year, my fantasy is that we enlist a few influencers and create a kindness treasure hunt. You know, the Talmud says that every day is a blessing treasure hunt. You're supposed to find 100 blessings every day. So just to make it easy, our kindness treasure hunt, just find 1 kindness a day. Years ago, when I wrote my parenting book, Children of Character, Leading Your Children to Ethical Choices in Everyday Life, I used to do a lot of parenting workshops. And at those workshops, I used to say, I can summarize this whole book in 1 sentence, which meant that nobody had to go out and buy it. But the 1 sentence was, be the kind of adult you want your children to grow up to be. Well, perhaps that's pretty much what the kindness treasure hunt's all about as well. It's be the kind of person you want your children to admire and grow up to emulate. You may remember a famous psychology experiment about putting a rat in a maze and a piece of cheese in some very complicated end of the maze and the rat will eventually find the cheese. And then the next time you put the rat in the maze, it'll zip right to that place again and zip right to that place every time. And if you take the cheese away and put it somewhere else, the rat will zip right to the same place, and be frustrated and confused. Zip again the next time, finding that the cheese isn't there. But the question is, how many times do you think that rat will keep running down that same path once the rat realizes that the cheese only used to be there? Maybe 3 times. After that, they'll never go down that route again, but will explore any other route until they finally find the cheese again. But that really wasn't the point of the experiment. The point was, if you put a man in a similar maze, and he eventually figured out how to find the cheese, and then you move that cheese somewhere else, the man will keep going down that same route over and over and over and over again until he drops from exhaustion and never find the cheese again. Why? Because he knows, I found the cheese right here before. So if I keep going down the same path, I'm positive that eventually that cheese will show up again. Of course, we all call that the very definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And yes, that really is the point. We humans, for all our brains and our memories and our opposable thumbs, are not even as smart as rats when it comes to finding the cheese. That is, when it comes to finding what really matters in life. Every single day, the quality of every relationship that you have with your friends, with your spouse, with your partner at home or work, children, boss, subordinate, strangers standing next to you in line, people that you love to be with, and those you'd prefer to avoid. It's all in your power. I always remember what Louise Hay once taught, which is, no one actually has any power over you because you are the only thinker in your mind. We all choose who we are by the choices we make every day to do the right thing or not, even if the entire rest of the world seems to have gone crazy and everyone around us seems to have forgotten what really matters. Because in spite of sometimes being dumber than rats, what makes us human is our infinite capacity for faith in ourselves and in the future. We face tragedy, whether communal or personal, and we go on. we pick up the sometimes shattered pieces of our lives. We take a breath and we go on. This is how we change the world. One person at a time, one act of kindness at a time, by simply creating one unexpected blessing in the life of another at a time. Really, I'd love you to believe that the day you were born was the day that the world needed you. So I end, as always, with a story. As you know, throughout my career, I've been very involved with interfaith work, and so I've gone to lots of Christian church services over the years, and most of the time, the church service will begin with the pastor saying, "The Lord be with you," and the congregation automatically responds, "and also with you." You can go from church to church, you'll hear the first words of the preacher being, "The Lord be with you," the congregation automatically responding, "and also with you." So I was invited once to speak at one of our local churches, and as I walked up to the podium, I realized that the microphone wasn't working, and without thinking, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, "There's something wrong with this microphone." And the congregation dutifully replied, "And also with you." Probably, but this Rosh Hashanah, I know one thing for sure, that what you say and what you do and who you are matters, makes a difference to everyone. Shana Tova Mituka, to a sweet and kinder new year.